Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Food and Impact DFA Scoping Jam final presentation. We're so excited to share our insights and our journey these past 6 weeks. So I'd like to start off with a statistic that says 52.4 million tons of food ends up in landfills annually in the United States. While this startling statistic implies that there's some sort of abundance of food in the United States, this couldn't be further from the truth, as you'll see throughout our presentation the varying effects of food insecurity in the United States and the communities it affects. One of the reasons why we believe our challenge is that DFAers should take on our national challenge is because it is widely applicable. In the United States, 12% of the population experiences food insecurity, and that adds up to 1 out of 8 every individual in the country. A bit of background on our process. We started by doing individual secondary research on topics we were interested that related to food. We then synthesized our insights and then compiled them into the scoping template that we hope future DFAers can take on.
So we used Mural as a tool to work through the design thinking process as we set out to understand the broad topic of food and impact. We identified users' needs and goals. From there, we sorted our virtual stickies into categories of likeness and came up with the general areas of resources, perceptions, systems, sustainability, geography, and user groups. Then each of us took on one of those areas to do further secondary research. Specifically, we honed in on learning from professionals and experts, government programs and NGOs, current solutions, and things that we should consider. Our research led us to consider the following learnings when continuing research and ideating solutions: that buying behavior is influenced by sociocultural, ethnic, and geographical contexts, and that federal programs may be limiting buying options, and that social stigma surrounds food insecurity and poverty. Lastly, we identified through our research that solutions need to be sustainable, balancing people, planet, and profit. When ideating a solution, we should consider social, economic, and environmental variables. Now I'll pass it off to Brooke to go through our insights.
Thanks, Alicia. So we each developed a number of key insights from our individual research and utilized the dot voting feature in Mural in order to create a hierarchy of the insights, which we collectively found to be the most compelling. And from there, we worked to restructure them to ensure their feasibility. And that resulted in these 5 key insights, which spanned from the impacts of certain food assistance programs to the barriers that people face surrounding food insecurity, such as stigma and awareness of resources. Specifically, an intriguing insight concerned the impact of opening grocery stores in food deserts, which actually does not immediately result in changes in individuals' buying behavior. Creating sustainable solutions that could adapt with the needs of a community over time was at the forefront of all of these considerations. So how can we address these issues? We came up with these 3 initial how can we's, and the first one looked at how to sustainably adapt needs-based programs such as food banks into programs that enable those in need to provide for themselves. Number 2 focused on improving our understanding of buying behaviors in food insecure communities in order to more effectively address healthy eating behavior. And finally, we looked at how to overcome the barriers that individuals face to increase the ease of use of federally funded programs, since these programs only serve a fraction of those eligible. So now I'll pass it on to Jiyoon, and she will talk to you about our project scope.
Great, thanks, Brooke. So we wanted to take these 3 initial how can we's to better define the scope of our project. In order to do so, we reached out to a few folks, including these 2 interviewees, Professor Elaine Power and Professor Jennifer Black. Professor Power is at Queen's University and researches poverty, class, food, and health, whereas Professor Black is at UBC and researches the social determinants of health both in Canada and in the US. One of the things that stuck with us the most was when Elaine said that we pay a lot of money for poverty. This quote is reflective of the spirit of both conversations, which revealed that food insecurity is not an isolated problem. Ultimately, food insecurity stems from poverty, which takes a toll on different facets of our society, such as the healthcare system. Now I'll pass it off to Jen.
Thanks, Gian. So everything you've heard up until now has led us to this new refined how can we that we're going to pass off to DFAers that they're going to ideate and create wonderful solutions around. So our how can we is how can we sustainably equip communities to address the obstacles that caretakers face when dealing with food insecurity. But why is this important? So it's really important because we've narrowed it down to these 6 different ideas, which our solution will address, or our how can we will address. So specifically, we have caretakers, access, policy, stigma, gender, and context. Caretakers carry the burden of overcoming food insecurity in their households. And better access to existing resources is crucial, especially to these caretakers that have multiple people that they're taking care of, maybe multiple jobs. They're not only taking care of one thing. We also see that the stigma is really important. So caretakers face a lot of social stigma related to food insecurity. And then one thing that really shocked us was that gendered responsibilities are embedded into federal programs, whether they know it or not. So even though we couldn't tackle policy, which is a very large topic and very difficult to approach for a DFA scope of only a few months, so instead we wanted to showcase that the gendered responsibilities that are embedded in federal programs is something that we can tackle and still create positive change without changing policy. So here's a list of impactful reading that we're going to pass off to the DFAers. These were recommended by Professor Jennifer Black, and they range from everything talking about food insecurity to breastfeeding to levels of poverty, and they're a free resource for you guys to use for your research. So now I'm going to pass it back to our team lead, Jamie, and she's going to close us out.
That concludes our presentation. Thank you, Jen. Thank you for listening to our Scoping Jam Insights. I'd like to thank the wonderful team of ladies you see on this slide. None of this work could have been possible without them, and it's been a pleasure working with each and every one of them.